Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I think this is going to be relatable for so many people, but this is me. Is this you? Do you get out of bed in the morning and you get out of a chair and you're just stiff? You just like, when is this going to stop? And in a little while, it'll go away. Get the cup of coffee. It starts to feel a little bit better. It's pretty much, I feel it almost every day. How do you get relief from that? What is that? Potentially, what is that? How do you live pain-free? How do you bounce out of bed in the morning and just say, wow, I feel great? Or are you saying to yourself, yeah, I'm getting old? Well, there's something called structural integration that can greatly help you. And she is somebody that is trained in that and helps with that modality in a big way. And she's Mary McMichael, and she's back with us. Mary, welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, Steve. Nice to be with you today.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Your company is called Integrated Body Dynamics. And before we go anywhere, let's talk about structural integration. What exactly is it? And why do we feel that way? I got, two questions here. Why do we feel that way when we get up in the morning?
Mm-hmm. Well, over time we live our lives and our body's made up of, a bony structure, muscles that allow us to move in all kinds of various ways. And what holds all of that together, including all of our organs, is connective tissue. Some people call it fascia. And that connective tissue is around and through everything in our bodies. And over time, as we move different ways or we hold our bodies in specific ways, that connective tissue will actually adjust its consistency to help support us. So, for instance, I'm sitting here in a chair. If I were to sit for several hours, my body is going to thicken up the connective tissue to help hold me in this position and make it easier. But then when I go to stand up, the connective tissue is trying to kind of pull me forward into a sitting position. So standing up now is more challenging. And it's similar throughout the body. If you've got your legs bent a lot of the time, or if you're doing a lot of repetitive movement of some type, your tissue is going to change consistency in order to help hold you in that position that you're trying to maintain. But then when you go to do something else, it restricts you from that movement and doesn't let you do other things as easily. And then it actually takes more energy to do things that you want to do every day. So structural integration is really designed to release those restrictions that get created from that tissue thickening up in various areas so that you can move freely and easily and be able to do the things that you want to do with a lot less energy expended.
With what you said, and it does make perfect sense. It really does when you think about it, even for us that really don't have a background in any of this. The tissue that it's almost like it's trying to support you. Right. Does it change when you're younger to when you're older? Why do we get up out of a chair when we're 25 and we're first thing in the morning, get out of bed? It doesn't feel the same as it does when you're, let's say, 55.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of opinions about that. But first of all, when you're a child, you're getting a lot of fluid, right, on a consistent basis, and you're constantly moving in all kinds of directions. So you ever watch like a 2-year-old, they're in constant motion. So it's not like they're sitting in a specific position for 8 or 10 hours or doing repetitive movement over and over. They're constantly on the go doing different types of things. And then, the older you get, the more years you've had holding your body in specific ways or making specific movements. And quite honestly, some of it is just behavior. Like I carry my purse on my left shoulder for 30 years, and pretty soon my shoulder's like this to keep my purse from falling off. Well, then it creates a restriction in my shoulder that may affect the other shoulder or the arm or other things. So some of it is just that it builds up over time. But quite honestly, I've worked on people from 2 months to 95, and it exists in everyone, but it is going to be different in each individual depending on their specific holding pattern or moving pattern or, other traumas that have happened. Let's say someone has had knee surgery. I have a lot of people with knee surgeries. they'll come in and they have been in a fixed position for weeks while they're recovering. And of course, the tissue above and below the knee are going to have a lot of restriction. So when they go through physical therapy, it's going to be very difficult to get that ease and range of motion back in the whole leg, right? And you see the same thing, like if someone has broken an arm, they may be in a cast and it may be in a sling. So then you've got pressure on the arm and the neck and the back, all of these other areas that are trying to support that area that's healing. So different people, depending on what the various combination of things that have occurred in their life, they're going to have different patterns in different areas of their body that may restrict them. And quite frequently over time, then it begins to cause pain.
We talk about people with an injury and healing, and it takes months. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm talking 7 hours in bed. And you feel, call it a restriction, trying to get out of bed, feel okay. I can't imagine what that must feel like if you have a broken arm, and especially when you're older.
Right.
Let's assume that we don't have any injuries, and it's almost impossible to do that because things happen. But let's say in a perfect world, as time goes on, let's use bed for example. Why is, you get out of bed when you're 30 and it's okay, but when you're 60, it feels radically different, and all you did was lay in bed for 7 hours.
Right. Well, a lot of that, like I said, is diet, exercise. Probably when you're not in bed, you are doing a lot more movement at 25 than you probably are at 65 or 70.
Okay.
And so you're keeping your tissue moving in various directions throughout the day. When you're sleeping, hopefully you're sleeping soundly enough that you're not thrashing all over the bed, but you are moving somewhat during your sleep. And put another 40 years of sleeping in a given position, and you will have restrictions from sleeping in the same position for that long. So, over time, it builds up to be more and more. The one thing I tell people when they start coming in is that they need to be very hydrated. Some of it is that the connective tissue will change and start holding you in a position. And if you're not getting enough hydration, then that tissue becomes dried out and it's much more difficult to get that to release. Plus,
Maybe that's an answer for a lot of us. It's
right.
You don't want to drink something before you go to bed because you're going to be going to the bathroom overnight and breaking up your sleep. But on the flip side of that, you want to be well hydrated.
Right.
Yeah, and that's we know we should be drinking way more than we drink. I think if we tested anybody, probably out of 100 people, probably 95% are
dehydrated.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever your weight is in pounds, let's say a person weighs 200 pounds, they should be drinking half their weight in ounces of water every day. So that's 100 ounces of water. Most people are drinking nowhere near that.
Not even close.
Right. But our cells are filled with water, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at just general biology, our body needs a lot of fluid in order to be healthy and, bring nutrients into the body and then release toxins out of the cells.
When you work with someone, Mary, do you actually feel an injury? Can you tell that they had one in that spot as you're, working with them? I don't want to say massaging, but working with them with your hands.
It's a manual body work that I do. So I don't necessarily feel the injury. What I feel is the restriction that's left from the injury. So as an example, someone has had a knee replacement or a broken bone. Sometimes I have people who have had fusions. What I'm not feeling is the break. What I'm feeling is the tissue around that becomes restricted. And a lot of people are very unaware of how their body feels. They become somewhat disassociated with their body because they don't want to think about the pain or the restriction. So over time, it's an unconscious thing. They kind of disassociate from that. And one of the things that I work with folks on is becoming more aware of what's going on in their body. So I'll ask them, are you noticing that the tissue is different when I'm touching it here than when I'm touching it over here? And yes, I can feel those restrictions when I come across those. And usually after some amount of time, the client will begin to notice that more as well. And it almost becomes a joke over time, because when I first do intake, I'll ask people, what are you feeling in your body? And they sometimes can't really tell me. They know how they're being impacted by their ability to move or not move, but they're not really noticing what's going on in the body that's causing that. And over a series of sessions, they become much more aware of what they're actually feeling, where they can then start to take more action on their own with either stretches or using various tools I suggest they use to open that up in between sessions.
What do people tell you when a session is over? Do they feel better, instant relief? What do you get from them?
It's very interesting. I get obviously a mix of reactions. Sometimes people are like really surprised how easy it is to get up off the table. Some people
Wow.
get up and they're pain free for the first time in a long time. So,
Mm,
I had one client tell me this was life changing for me, because she had been in so much pain for so long, and other people around her really didn't know because she never complained. Um,
wow.
That's what keeps me coming back to this work, because the reaction of people when they get that level of relief is very fulfilling. It makes what I do very worthwhile.
What what brought you to this, Mary? You have an amazing passion to help people. It's a very specific niche that you
Mhm.
perform in structural integration. But how did it start for you?
Well, I mean, I have been interested in natural health my whole life, and in different ways. I've used a lot of natural methods before, but um, a few years ago, I had been in corporate America my whole career, and I had taken a few days off and was helping some people do some moves and moving some things around. I had walked. I always walk a lot, but not that much. I walk like 12 miles, 2 or 3 days in a row, on and off moving trucks and hauling stuff and up and down stairs and whatever. And I felt fine. And then 2 or 3 days later, after I was done with all that, I started feeling stiff. And it got worse and worse to the point where I could barely get up out of bed. And walking up and down the stairs was just really challenging for me. I tried everything that you would think you would try. I tried massage, I tried chiropractic, I tried physical therapy. I went to different doctors to see what was going on. And a lot of them would just say, this is life. You should expect this with aging. I just don't accept that. And finally, I discovered some information on structural integration. I looked around in my own area, and at that time there was one structural integration therapist in the area. So I called, made an appointment. I went in, and in that first session, a lot of that restriction and pain was just removed. And he said, this is usually delivered in a series of sessions. And I said, well, sign me up for that, because I want to feel this freedom all over my body, right? Because it was mostly in my legs and feet and hips where I was having the problem at the time. So I started the series. The series is 11 sessions. By the time I got about halfway through that, I said, this is just life changing for me. I have to be able to do this for other people. So
Wow.
I started putting things in motion to, leave my corporate job and go back to school to be trained to do this.
Is the feeling you get after a session or two, is it similar to a traditional massage?
Well, you're going to feel better like you would with a massage. I think the difference with a massage is a couple things. Number one, a massage is always going to go through pretty much a set um, of movements. So they have a pattern they follow depending on the type of massage you've bought, right? They're going to do a Swedish or a deep tissue or whatever. The difference with structural integration, it is a very organized way to go throughout the whole body, and it's done at a slower, deeper level than a massage. So in my mind, unless you're doing a really deep tissue work, it's going to be fairly superficial and you're going to feel better, but releasing some of the tension in the muscles will only last a certain amount of time unless you get deep enough to actually make that change in the connective tissue. Because you can adjust the bones, you can adjust the muscles, but unless you address the connective tissue, the connective tissue is going to pull the muscle and bone back to where that tissue believes it should be.
Mm.
So there are massage therapists who've had fascial training and can certainly use some of the same techniques. I think you and I talked about it once before that one of the big things that we learn in the structural integration training is the assessment part of it. Because a person may have a pain in their lower back, but that restriction may actually be coming from their glutes or from the front of their thigh or some other area. So trying to understand where the cause is for what they're feeling is something that's typically not taught in any massage program.
Hmm. Is lactic acid released? I've often heard that with massages, and that is something that's very impactful and does help make you feel better, and even chemically.
So I would say maybe. Anytime you manipulate the tissue, the cells are going to release some level of toxin. One of the reasons I tell people to come into the session very hydrated is because as those toxins, including lactic acid, get released, it can then transport out of the body easier if you're better hydrated. But if you come into the session very dehydrated, you're still going to have some detox taking place. It's just not going to operate as effectively or efficiently.
I would have to imagine it's the same thing if you go for a traditional massage. You should be hydrated before you go.
Right, right. And
Hmm.
after you leave, because you want to come in hydrated so that it's easier to get the manipulation done at the time. But you're going to continue to have that detox effect in your body going on for hours or a day or two afterwards. So
Yeah.
you continue to hydrate after that session.
I always heard definitely hydrate after, and I went for a good massage, yeah, a
Mhm.
quality one. There are some,
Right.
the foot massage place can do it for you, and they're not really trained, and it's it's okay. You get a better one from time
Mhm.
to time. I went for a good massage with a gift certificate that I got from the holidays. After
Uh-huh.
the massage, and it wasn't even super deep tissue, but it was very targeted, and I felt great.
Mhm.
Day later, I didn't feel that great.
Right.
And I think it was because I wasn't hydrated during the massage. Even later that afternoon, I should be like, I still feel good. Didn't feel the same. Didn't feel like I think it should. And I
Mhm.
really think just what you said, you need to be hydrated. But I didn't know that you need to be hydrated. You should be hydrated anyway, but especially
Right.
going into a massage. I didn't know that. I've often heard, always heard, after, make sure you drink a lot of water.
Mhm. Yeah,
Hmm.
coming into it and going out of it, both you're going to want to be hydrated. And, for many uh, centuries, I guess I would say, all of the fascial research was done on dead bodies. And it hasn't been until the last few years when some of the microsurgery type microscopic technology's been available where they could go into a live body and see connective tissue in operation. What they've discovered is the connective tissue has its own circulation system, just like the blood system or the lymph system. And since all the cells are wrapped with connective tissue, when you detox out of the toxin out of the cell, it's going to pass through the connective tissue into the bloodstream. So having everything hydrated enough that that can work very efficiently is going to allow all of that uh, toxin and trauma and whatever else is trapped as cellular memory to export out of the body in a much more comprehensive way and more efficient and not just be reabsorbed back into the cell.
Wow. There's a lot going on here that many of us don't realize.
Right. Our bodies are miraculous pieces of technology.
Unbelievable what's going on under the
Mhm.
surface, literally under the surface. If somebody has an injury, now let's say they had stitches from
Mhm.
something, you know, back in
Mhm.
the day. This can be impactful, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Um, do you live with that connective tissue issue from the beginning of that injury? Once it all heals, it just stays with you all through the years?
Yeah, and sometimes it can get worse because then, that restriction may cause a pull on tissue around it. So then that tissue is going to try to compensate and it may adjust its composition to, support that area that is very restricted. So as an example, I see a number of people who had um, laparoscopic surgery where they've had, the incision through the belly button and an incision somewhere else in their abdomen.
Uh-huh.
And there will be restriction right around both of those incisions. Well, then you get pull from that tissue on other areas of the abdomen, which can either cause you to pull forward a little bit or cause tissue to come in from the sides, but it is going to affect the tissue around it. So yes,
Wow.
that impact can grow over time.
So Mary, let's look at it from a different standpoint. We're talking about invasive. Even
Mhm.
if it's laparoscopic, it's invasive. What
Right.
if you just had an injury? You fell and you didn't break anything. I've had this happen before. You fall and just you need stitches.
Mhm.
Could be anywhere. Basically surface. At least that's what it appears to be.
Mhm.
Is this also impactful for something like that?
Well, it can be. Again, it depends on the condition of your body when you had those stitches. So if you're very hydrated and you're healthy at the time you have the stitches,
Wow.
right, then that tissue is going to heal better, and any of the waste material from the healing process is going to be exited out of the body in a healthier manner. So anytime that we have trauma in a tissue, the body is going to bring white blood cells there and fluid there to, clear that area. And if you're well hydrated, that's going to operate very well at the time and you're going to heal better. If you're not hydrated or there's other things going on in your body that are preventing that from healing well, for instance, if you're diabetic, a lot of times it's not going to heal as well as if you're not, right? I mean, so it really is, it depends. It depends on the condition of the body at the time. It depends on how, the condition of the body over time after that. That's why everything is really has to be customized for each individual.
Oh, I just learned something here from you, Mary, in that if you have any kind of surgery, even if it's superficial, minor,
Mhm.
again, goes back, drink a lot of water, got
Right.
to hydrate. So essential
Right. It
to
is.
heal.
And it is important to have the minerals you need in that water too. So I tell people to
Don't
try to
complicate it
at
anymore,
least.
Mary. We're just going to drink water. Now we're getting picky as what kind of water but it should be.
Now it needs to be healthy water with some amount of electrolytes in it on some, 1 or 2 glasses a day that have electrolytes because that's the minerals your body needs to have that healthy balance.
Interesting that you said that because I heard that a couple of months ago. Bought a container of electrolytes. Just add it to your
Uh-huh.
water.
Right.
It's got a little bit of flavor to it. I was doing it for a while, and then I started thinking it doesn't mix that well. So it's work. You know, I'm not gonna keep
Uh-huh.
stirring it. And then I'm thinking, like, is this really? I spent like $40 on this can. Is this really beneficial? Sounds like I really should be using it.
Yeah, you just need to find a brand that works better for you. There's a ton of brands out
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of good ones. So just, look for something that's a balanced mix of all of the minerals and electrolytes that you need.
So you told us your story on how you
Yeah.
got to where you are in this path. Did you ever have a medical background?
No,
Unbelievable.
no medical background. I had all the required classes, of course, that for this program, which is a lot of anatomy and biology, physiology. Um, we don't get into a lot of the chemistry, of course, but you have to understand how the body functions. And so that you know where there are things that are barriers to this type of work, because there are certain people that are going to have conditions where we wouldn't want to work with the tissue. And so it's important to know enough about the person's health condition to understand what you can and can't do with that individual.
Wow. Well, you certainly know your stuff. And I really
I
mean that.
appreciate that.
I'm surprised you don't have a medical background. I'm kind of shocked the way you answer and you're plugged into what you do, but also the body and how it works. So,
Mhm.
I guess that's a testament to the training for structural integration. Your
Right,
website is integratedbodydynamics.com.
right,
I'm sure unfortunately, you can't do this virtually. So
right.
you gotta be living in Nebraska if you want to work with Mary or have her work on you. But you're so good to provide these thoughts for everybody, the information, the relief, and the peace of
Right,
mind that I'm not broken. I just need a little touch up here when other
right.
things aren't getting the job done.
Yeah, and I believe that every human body can use this work in one way or another.
Yeah, no, that's what it's sounding like. It's almost like a preventative for future issues down the road.
That's right.
Um, Unbelievable. Mary, always great talking with you. And I know you offer so many other things as well. So maybe next time we'll get with that. And I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Have a great day.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.